humans have a love-hate relationship with change. We need it for growth and variety, and yet we hate the upheaval it brings into our lives. Resilience seems to be the answer. So let's explore a new kind of conversation where we look at the turbulence of change and the resilience that enables us to not only survive it, but to truly thrive from it. I'm Paula Shaw, life transition expert, grief counseling specialist, and author. I'll be spotlighting influential people on this podcast, people who have taken the steps to change it up. So join us as we share valuable information to help you navigate the rocky waters of change. Come on, jump on in. Welcome to Change It Up Radio. I am your host, Paula Shaw, and I'm so delighted to have you with me today. This is the final show in what we've been calling a season of grief. And we have done shows on so many aspects of grief. You may remember in the very beginning of this season, I did a master class on grief, just talking about what it is, how we experience it, and the many different faces that we have of grief. It doesn't just show up as tears. Sometimes it shows up as physical pain. Sometimes it shows up as fear, anxiety, disorientation, hurt, inability to focus. There's so many ways it can show up, and we have discussed many of them this season. This is the final show of the season of grief. And as you know, I am your host, Paula Shaw. I am an author. This season in particular, we focused a lot on this book, Grief. When Will This Pain Ever End? The last couple of weeks, I have done a whole teaching on saying the right thing when you don't know what to say, which is another one of my books on this topic of grief. Our guest today has written a book, a very interesting book on grief called 9 Friends in Time of Loss. And we'll be talking to her more about that very shortly. But I just wanted to say in opening this show that my hope is that my listeners and viewers have learned a lot about grief, because I think it's a very misunderstood condition. And I will call it a condition because it's an ongoing state. It doesn't just happen remember when we used to get 3 days off work, which is so ridiculous. Nobody gets through their grief in 3 days, but we got 3 official days off back then. And I think we've learned a lot about grief. In the meantime, we've realized that every person's grief is unique, that every person's grief is impacted by how they grew up, who raised them, what they experienced. And so there is no one size fits all. There are no 5 stages of grief, which is a common misunderstanding. Those 5 stages were the 5 stages of death and dying as elucidated by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. So many things have been covered in this season of grief for the last few months. And I will be taking a little time off now before we start our fall season. And I haven't yet decided what we're going to focus on for the fall season. So I can't even give you a promo to get you excited, because I want to just be present with it and really think it through and get a sense of what's needed at that time. So before any other time goes by, I want to introduce our guest. But first, I want to remind you that you can hear past shows on any of the platforms where this show is archived. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we are on every major podcast platform. So you will have no trouble if you get inspired today and say, oh, wow, I want to go back and look at those shows and see what was covered and maybe learn some new things that will help me in my life or help my friends or my family, then it is very easy to find those shows. Just all you really need to do is Google Change It Up Radio with Paula Shaw, and you will find us in many different places. I also want to just say for a moment that I think most of you know that I also have a private practice as a life transition coach, helping people deal with these transitions that come up in life, because we're not automatically experts just because everybody goes through grief. We don't always know exactly how to help ourselves and what are the most effective things to do. So, in my private practice, I help people walk through that grief journey a step at a time. And if you want more information about that, please go to paulashaw.com. I also offer a complimentary 20-minute consult if you would like to just chat with me and see if we might be a good fit for doing work in the future. All right. So I've told you I'm an author, I'm a life transition coach, and of course, most of you know, a speaker. If your group would be interested in having a talk on any of the kinds of things that I have covered, please reach out to me also through paulashaw.com. And if you want to get information about being a guest on this show or a sponsor, go to changeitupradio.com. Very simple. Changeitupradio.com. And that's also another place where all the shows are archived and the show notes, which you may be very interested in, especially if you're feeling like you want to reach out to any of the guests that we've had on the show or reach out to me. All right. Without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Jeannie Seeley-Smith. She is the retired president and CEO of Perspectives Inc., which is a nonprofit in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is currently she's the president of Perspectives' $19 million capital campaign. We'll have to have her tell us more about that. But she's been working over 4 decades with this program, which is award winning and is included in the Midwest's largest supportive housing program for women and children. She deals with a population of women who are in recovery and finds housing for them and their children and gives them all kinds of resources and help, which she'll be telling us more about in just a few moments. She lives in southwest suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota, which I had the pleasure of getting to visit. The publisher of Saying the Right Thing When You Don't Know What to Say, Calumet Publishing, is there and had me out there back in the day when I first published that book. All right, I think we need to just get on with meeting this woman. So let's bring her out. Jeannie, please join me. Hi.
Oh, hello, Paula. It's so good to join you.
Thank you. It's so
I
good to
love the
see
introduction.
you. Well, you
What
did
a
it all.
series
It
you've
was
been
just telling the truth about you.
no,
So,
yeah.
Jeannie, let's begin, I think, by talking a little bit about perspectives, because 4 decades, that's a pretty big chunk of your life that you have been working in that program. So tell us more.
Yeah. Well, I actually, this is very new to be called retired because it was this past Monday was my official retirement
Oh, my.
transfer from my job to the new CEO, who's just fabulous. I love her. She's just going to do so well at the job. But then my transition was to finish the Capital Drive we're on, where, as you mentioned, Paul, it's $19 million. I'm trying to fill that gap before I, take off to the yonder on a true retirement. So I'm anxious to do that. It's a $5 million gap, and if I'm working just doing that, I'm hoping to get that done, within the next 6-7 months. So
Now,
yeah, I'm
Jeannie,
so newly retired.
just so our listeners are clear, what is this money for that you're trying to raise?
Well, we're building, we have 2 campuses. Perspectives exists for um, it's a multi-generational program, but it exists to both house women and help them to recover. So there's many housing programs around the U.S., some very good housing programs. But we have a housing campus. And on that campus is a community of 52 families. We have 5 apartments all next to each other: Serenity, Harmony, Journey, Wisdom, and Sanctuary. These are all the names of our houses where women live with their children. So they're all mothers and they all have children. So as I said, there are many programs that do have housing, but what they don't have is any place to do the programming. Because the statement always is, you can get a woman off the street, but you have to get her on her feet. She can get a job, but can she retain a job? So we have a large, right now, 22,000 square foot building that is 1 mile down the road from our family center. And we have shuttles that go back and forth. We have 2 vans, but it is a 60-year-old building. And the building used to be an office building. And we had done quite a lot on that office building to renovate it so that we can have our outpatient treatment program there. We have our support groups. We have a whole after school program. We have this amazing signature program called Kids Cafe. It's actually the Cargill Kids Cafe, which is a large classroom kitchen where the kids cook with chefs, and then they serve their dinner and they all eat together, family style. So we have early childhood kids in there that are under 5, preschool. So it's a whole agency of multi-generational programming with a multidisciplinary staff to basically meet most of the needs that our women have. And
Jeannie,
that is the building we're redoing.
I have a million more questions about the program, but we need to take a quick break. So we'll go to break and we'll be right back with Jeannie Seeley-Smith. We'll be right back.
Is living in today's fast-paced world making you feel stressed and out of balance? Are anxiety, sleeplessness, depression, lack of focus, or weight gain robbing you of your relationship and your energy? If you're ready for change, you need to call Paula Shaw. Paula helps you identify and eliminate self-sabotaging thinking and behavior. Using a wide variety of mind-body techniques, she provides her clients with the most effective processes for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and with me today is Jeannie Seeley-Smith, who is just this week the retired CEO and president of a program in Minneapolis called Perspectives. So, Jeannie, what I really would love you to clarify for our listeners is who is the population that you serve?
It sounds very dramatic, but women who are coming to us are dying, and their children are coming with them, who also are going to feel the effects of a motherless life if their mother does die. I say they are dying, Paula, because they are terminal if they are continually using the drugs that they're using.
Yes.
We are talking meth and fentanyl and heroin. They come in recovery from those drugs, but they can relapse, and many of them are relapsing on the way in. So if they're not dying physically, which already we know that even in recovery they have compromised a lot of their physical their physical strength through diabetes and hypertension and heart disease. So these are young women, however. They're under 25 mostly. They're 20 or maybe.
Goodness.
Yeah. At least under 30. So they are coming with young children. And they're not only dying physically, they are dying emotionally. And they have what you have done such an amazing job of awareness on is that they are dying from their grief, their unresolved grief, which has broken them, depress them, leaves them in despair and in a
Yes.
continual cycle of using. So
Mm.
I say that, we always say the women who come to us, our target population, are women seeking recovery and seeking a healthy lifestyle. They want that. They want a second chance. To get there is a huge barrier for them.
Yes. Yes.
But 75% of our women do.
And what kind of programs do you offer them, Jeannie?
Well, the first thing we do is make sure they feel safe. So our housing campus is very unique in that we have the gardens and the patios and all the brick paths to each one of the house that joins them. And when they walk into their apartment is fully furnished because we want them to feel that. Everyone that comes to us, our biggest message to them is that we believe in you. We believe that you can do this. And that is why we have all the linens, all of the kitchenware, everything that they need, for in the refrigerator. We take them to make sure that they have food for that first week. So right away, there is a feeling that somebody cares for me and I feel safe. So we provide that initially. Then there is a 2-week program of onboarding where we have their children, of course, get enrolled in school. They come down to the family center right away. They get enrolled in our after school programs or else in our children's development program. Women have their own case managers. They have their own counselors. They have their own treatment programs, and they have a mother's advocate for them. So we have wraparound, comprehensive, trauma-informed services. So this is, people wait 4, 5, 6 months to get into our program because our reputation is that once there, you are able to have everything you need to climb out. And that is what we help them do. Oh, Paula, I'm losing your volume.
Somehow
There you go.
I got muted. Not quite sure that
happens to me all the time. I'm talking away, nobody can hear me.
Thank you for letting me know. I could have maybe come up with a real pearl of wisdom, and who would have ever heard it? What I was saying, though, Jeannie, is your program sounds so comprehensive. And I would also say, expensive. So how is this funded?
Well, there are many people who do ask, how do you replicate a program that is so comprehensive? And you sort of build it brick by brick. When we started, we only had case managers and we only had the apartments. But then we got attention with that. The women who came to us were going back into the community. And Hennepin County, which is a county of Minneapolis, they had done a study on the women, and they had previously seen that this population was causing a huge amount of money on the system and a lot of drain on the system. They were in court, they were in prison, they were in treatment programs, kids were in foster care. And so when we brought mom and child together to reunite them, that saved them, one family can cost $1 million in services.
Wow.
It costs $50,000 to be incarcerated. It costs thousands for children to be in foster care, and then court cost, and it's just such a tragedy, right? I mean, is that how we want our money to be used, or that isn't what the woman wants in her life? So everybody's on the same page of being able to work together. But once you do a few things, like anyone out there who has an interest of creating such a program, you will soon be known like we were. And then when you are known, the state will come, the federal government came, the county came, foundations, they wanted to help us. So we bought another 3 buildings. We built our families. We bought our family center. We put in Kids Cafe. all of this was not done overnight. I mean, this has been
Mhm.
40 years. So
Yeah.
now it's time for us to renovate our family center and to rebuild a haven, a sanctuary of dignity. That when somebody
Oh,
walks into our beautiful atrium, that woman and that child are going to right away feel somebody really, really believes in me. And
mm.
when that first step of believing in someone happens, I think sometimes, Paula, that's necessary for the person to just inch forward a little bit and begin to believe in themselves.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Jeannie, when you and I were chatting earlier in the week, a topic came up that was near and dear to my heart, and I was thrilled that you share the same perspective. And it was about this unreconciled grief and how it affects a person
mhm.
later in life. And especially, you were saying, with this population you're working with. So, would you share with our listeners a little bit about what we were saying about what happens when grief doesn't get healed?
Yeah. So we all know, I don't think there's a person, probably, I'm sure you agree, Paula, that walks this earth that does not have some unresolved grief.
Mhm.
How much grief and how profound your losses were affects you forever.
Yes.
Rather, and then you are either going to recover from that or you're going to repeat that, and you'll just go deeper into your grief. The women that we are seeing, and what you and I, was so beautiful to hear that you also agree that addiction and depression and mental health issues are all at the bottom core of that is someone who has not been able to resolve or even deal with their grief. And as you know, grief and denial is one of the,
Mhm.
I mean, every person who's not dealing with grief is living in denial with it, which is a common defense mechanism, of course.
Sure. Yes. And for years I have been saying, in fact, Jeannie, my original training was as an alcohol and drug abuse counselor. And then I discovered grief. And I did training under John James and Alan Wolfelt and other people who have really done some landmark work with grief. And that's where I realized that all of the addicts and the alcoholics that I had been originally working with at the core had unreconciled loss and
Yep.
pain and grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so tickled when you and I had that conversation the other day because not everybody sees it that way. I think trauma is commonly seen as an underlying cause for addiction. Certainly life circumstances, people who deal with physical abuse or verbal abuse, mental abuse can often be led to using substances to try to alleviate their pain. And then, of course, addiction follows.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
all of
And
those
mental health
things,
issues. Yeah.
yep,
Mhm.
all of those things are lost, right? And loss, it's like I
Mhm.
always say on this show, change equals loss because something's got to be left behind if something new is coming in. And
Mhm.
loss leads to grief because we humans don't like the discomfort of the unfamiliar or that upheaval that comes when something changes the circumstances of our life unexpectedly.
Mhm. And for
And
so long, as we were in years back in the 40s and 50s and probably even going into the 60s, grief was never given a lot of attention,
no,
because people were scared to talk about grief. And then if somebody felt grief, they would kind of hide their feelings because they didn't want somebody to feel uncomfortable, or they felt uncomfortable with their feelings, or they couldn't cry,
yes,
or if they cried, they would apologize for it. That, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm being emotional. So we
exactly.
really have, yeah, we have not been a good culture around how to deal with and how to give people permission to
Hmm.
grieve.
Hmm.
I mean, it's easier for them to do another coping mechanism, as the denial or anger or or a depression that they'll eventually fall into and start to take medication for. And that's not all bad, but the underlying, I always believe, like you do, that what happened? What happened to
Yes.
you? What
Yes.
did you lose? It doesn't have to be a death necessarily.
Mm-mm.
It possibly could be that you lost your parents through divorce, or else you are physically, something happened to you physically that now you have to
Exactly.
struggle with, and that is a loss, and that's a profound loss.
Mhm.
Something happened with your child that makes that child different than other children, and you don't have the storybook family maybe that somebody else does, and
Yeah.
that feels like a loss. There's
Mhm.
loss after loss after loss.
And Jeannie,
When people used to quit smoking, they felt like that was a loss.
yeah, oh
Their
my
friend was
God,
gone.
huge, absolutely huge. And I think one of the words that comes to me that I feel personally is really necessary when people are dealing with loss, or like in a situation like yours, you even said it earlier in our interview, safety is what's so critical. Safety
Mhm.
is the road, in my opinion, to doing the work that will help us actually heal the loss, so that it's not always this gaping open wound in our life that gets triggered by whatever comes our way.
Yeah, that's so critical, that Paula, that everybody needs that safe place, because they won't begin to grieve or be in touch with those deeper
Right.
emotions when they don't feel safe. So
Absolutely.
that's the women who come to us. There has been no safety. They were not safe with their parents. They weren't safe with their caregivers. They weren't safe with the men that they were with
Mhm.
who abused them, or
Mhm.
promoted drugs, or trafficked them, or were their Johns. I mean, we have women from all walks of life that have been so abused.
Mm.
I sometimes I think of the story of Fontaine in Les Mis, when she talks about the fact that she had this dream,
Yes.
when God was forgiven, and how
Yes.
life destroyed her dream. Um,
That that
that
song tears my
talk
heart.
about grief. Talk
Yes,
about grief.
absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. The dream she
that's
had.
many of the women who come to us, that
Mm.
life has destroyed their dream, and we just want our joy and the happiness of why I was there for 40 years, was because I could see the difference with women when they felt
Mhm.
safe and they became sober and they found their peace, their spiritual peace.
Mhm.
Dying spiritually is one of the big losses for people. If they lose that spirit, body, soul, spirit, if they lose any one of those three, obviously, that's tremendous grief. But when I see someone come up to me and said, "You all saved my life. I wouldn't be here. My child is healthy. I have a job. I'm moving." That's what kept me coming back over and over again. Every time I wanted to leave, I said, "I can't. Oh, it's too much. It's too much. I got to raise too much money. Can't stand raising money anymore." And then somebody would come and a client, or I'd go walk out on campus, and
Mm.
and the women would surround and talk about their lives, and it keeps you coming back.
It's beautiful work, Jeannie. It's such beautiful work. And we're going to need to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about 9 friends in a
Oh,
time
good.
of grief. All right, we'll be right back. Paula Shaw here. I'm thrilled that LifeWave phototherapy patches, which use no drugs or chemicals, have become a part of my life and my business. My family and I all use their wearable patch technology, and the results are life-changing. My parents in their 90s used the X39 patch, which activates stem cells, reverses aging, and improves the function of every area of the brain. I love X39 because I can work out with the 30-year-olds with no problem. And it's erased my fine lines and given my skin a youthful glow. LifeWave patches use a patented form of phototherapy, frequencies of light, to safely boost health and wellness at the cellular level. No drugs. To learn more, go to my website, lifewave.com/safe health. That's lifewave.com/safe health. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw, and my guest today is Jeannie Seeley-Smith, who is the newly retired CEO and president of Perspectives, an amazing
Yay.
program in Minneapolis that is serving recovering women in such a beautiful way, housing them and their children, providing programs to help them heal and re-enter society in a powerful, successful way. So Jeannie's program, which she has been working with for over 40 years, is an incredible success. And I am so delighted that she was able to come and share with us today how Perspectives actually works. But I'm also curious, Jeannie has a book called 9 Friends in Time of Grief. Jeannie, tell us a little bit about that book and who are our 9 friends?
Oh, this was so exciting when we talked, because this was all on, perspectives. And then we just connected, didn't we, Paula, around
Yes.
our real passion of helping people through grief,
Mhm.
and recognizing it. In
Yes.
this, I don't know how it came to me, but it was written 9 years ago. And 7 years ago, I just had published it in 2014. After writing it, took a year or so to write it, and it's just a small little gift book.
Mhm.
And I published it, and 1 year later, I lost my twin sister.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
and,
That must have
and
been huge.
that if any of your listeners who are a twin, you know what that loss is.
Mm.
And we had been even closer. Well, all twins, some twins are closer than others, of course, but we were inseparable because we had lost our mother quite suddenly when we were 9 years old.
Oh.
So I didn't even know who I was without my twin.
Mm.
And I had written this book in, Paula, it helped me through. It really did. So I kind of felt like it was divine intervention for me that I wrote this book and had it ready. And then I lost my brother this past November.
Mm.
And once again, I really practiced or it's not practice, it's allowing your body to give you what it has to
Yes.
get through grief. And I think we're created with these friends. And one of
Mm.
them is the shock. So your first friend is shock.
Shock.
And what
Mhm.
shock and what he looks like coming in with him carrying his bag. So it's all written as a metaphor. Shock arrives. And shock is really helps us. We don't realize it because it numbs. And we can't believe what
Mhm.
we can get done during that time of numbness, but it doesn't stay long.
Yeah.
And then after that, we have sobs. And that just arrows and arrows diving into you of excruciating pain. And anyone that has said, well, I didn't cry, when I lost, my loved one,
Mhm.
because that's not what I do. And there's no judgment on it, but it's why our tears were made, because our grief tears are different than tears that you have with a cold or smelling onion or whatever. Those, when your eyes water, grief tears have a DNA, and there are actual where we have serotonins that's why if anyone has really sob afterwards, they go, oh, okay, I feel a little bit better, because you are releasing the endorphins are coming into your body as you sob, and those tears are made for it. So why did we have those? Why did our body create those tears? And then the two horrible friends that come, and yet, we know we're always glad when they go, are grief and sorrow. And that's when the curtains shut, putting logs on the fire, quit eating. Nobody wants to be around you, But you, for a while, and then even in that little book, it talks about how you become the three musketeers with them and kind of get used to grief and loss, where you kind of wallow with them for a while.
Yeah.
And then down the path comes acceptance, and that gives you a little lift, that you get into that. But then I can't tell you the others because they're wonderful. The ones that come after, you have to read it. Yeah. But one of them is comfort. And that's my favorite.
Lovely.
She comes with a teapot on her head. Carrying, and she bakes cookies. And comfort will tell you never apologize, never stop your tears, and never apologize for them. But those are all things that you feel inside of you, Paula. If you have, and I don't know if you have ever felt a profound grief, you see where, I agree with you. Those 4 stages of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did not, the anger does not have to be there. The anger is a foe. It's a foe. It's not a friend.
Yes.
So there's 9 foes also: depression, and anger, and jealousy, and resentment, and there's foes of grief. But these are our friends. So someday I'm going to write the book about the foes, 9 foes.
Oh, you must. I thought that was already in this book. Well, now we know what you're going to be doing when you're fully retired, Jeannie. Once that other 5 mil comes in.
Yeah. Fear is a foe, right? I mean, we know from Jampowski, there's 2 things: fear and love. And fear is a foe.
Yep.
And it's hard, so hard not to have those feelings.
And, I do find it's funny. I believe I was speaking about this last week, and I ended up talking with clients about it this week too, that one of the things that we do when we're trying to help a griever that isn't helpful is give them information, intellectual information, when they're in an emotional state. And so, I think you're right. We have to approach people where they are, and maybe even now think about what friend they're working with at that point. Is it shock? Is it comfort? Are we all the way to comfort? Has forgiveness come in? Has acceptance come in? We need to consider all of the things that are contributing to the condition of the person that we're working with.
Yeah. So you just, you hit on the 9th friend, and that's what we hope. I had readers, one reader one time wrote me, and she said, I'm going off for 4 weeks to find my 9th friend. Now I talk about the 8 friends that are internal. The 9th friend you have to go find, and that is inner peace. It doesn't just come to you. You have to go find it.
I love that.
I always say that in my book when I endorse, I say, may you find your 9th friend.
Oh, that's beautiful, Jeannie. And I'm so honored that you've been here today to share with us the efforts that Perspectives are making or that have been made to help these women find that 9th friend. Find that
and when they do, those are the women that really, their recovery is pretty solid. That makes a difference on a woman. I'd rather she do. You have to replace everything that you lose. You have to replace it with something. That replacement of inner peace, you can find that.
Yes. And even though in the beginning, especially when you're in shock,
You're
inner
not going to
peace seems like the holy grail, like a place you'll never find. And that's
Yes.
why, as we've been saying today, it is a journey. You have
It
to
is.
go on the journey to get to that inner peace. But yes, it is possible. It is
Yes.
possible. And
Yes, it is, Paula.
thanks to people like you and programs like Perspectives, there's help out there to get people to that place. So,
And
Jeannie,
people like
I
you,
just,
too.
oh,
What
thank
you
you,
do,
dear.
it's just
Thank
amazing
you.
on how
Oh,
much joy you must be sending around in wisdom now. You touch a
bless
lot of people.
you. Oh, Jeannie, thank you so much for
Oh,
being with
my
us
pleasure.
today. I'm so delighted to know you, and I look forward to what I can do to help you, especially now in this effort that you're making right now to raise this final money. Is there somewhere that we can send people to learn more or to even donate if they're moved to do so?
That visit our website, perspectivesfamilycenter.org.
Okay.
So, and then the capital campaign is up there that you can click on that. You can click on any areas to donate. There is a place on Perspectives Family Center that you will, the Capital Drive, you can click on my email. Anyone that wants to know more, I can't wait to talk with them. There you go. So that's, that is a way to reach me as well, because I would love to talk to people about the needs that we have and or give them some opportunity if they like to participate or be on one of our committees. It's an exciting time. This is an area that I'm going into that I think is fun. Raising money for a purpose is fun. It's a big purpose. So anyone that wants to join me, or it doesn't even have to be money. A lot of people just have some real wise thoughts and some cool ideas, and it's fun to be in touch with anyone that shares, the hope and the dreams for another woman that she can change her life.
That is so beautiful. And thank you for your efforts. And by the way, if you're a listener and you're driving or doing something else, this information Jeannie just gave about how to reach her will be in the show notes. So don't worry, don't get in an accident trying to grab a piece of paper right now or text it to yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll have
Thank
it
you
all
for
in
saying
the show notes. Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeannie. Thank you for being with
Paula,
us.
I hope we connect again. It was just
we
wonderful. I can feel your
definitely
beautiful
will.
spirit through everything.
Oh, thank you, Jeannie. And after this break, we'll be right back, just doing a little review, reflecting on the season of grief that we've just completed.
I'm gonna stay tuned and listen to that.
Oh, good.
For those looking to improve their lives, there's nobody better to turn to than Paula Shaw. Paula helps people regain successful lives by identifying and eliminating self-sabotaging behavior using a multitude of mind-body techniques to identify and resolve their core issues. Working with a wide variety of healing modalities, she provides her clients with the most effective process for their specific needs. To book a session with Paula, call 858-480-9234. That's 858-480-9234.
Welcome back to Change It Up Radio. I'm your host, Paula Shaw. And as I mentioned earlier, we are completing the theme that we have been working with for the last few months. This will be the last show in our season of grief. And I want to take just a moment here to review who's been with us and thank them for the amazing contributions they've made. If this is the first show you've heard, I so strongly urge you to go back to the beginning and listen to these shows because, oh my goodness, there were so many beautiful things shared. Our first show was with NFL player or former NFL player Gary Plummer, who talked about the grief of having concussion damage and what he had to do actively and proactively to bring himself to the incredible state of life that he lives in now. We had an amazing show looking at the grief of foster children with Jenna Mendez, who's the head of that program for the Riverside School District. And we really realized anew that there's so much loss for foster children. They lose their family, they lose their school, they lose their friends so often because of the places that they have to be placed to bring them to safety. So if there's any way in your community you can help foster children programs, please reach out. We had an amazing show with Tracy Pryor, who is the executive director of One Safe Place, which is a place that I am working with. We just had an event this week. One Safe Place is very similar to Perspectives that we've just been discussing with Jeannie. This is a place that provides medical, legal, police, counseling, job training, equipment for computers and things that people might need, clothing. It's an incredible program to help those who have been through domestic abuse, elder abuse, child abuse, and human trafficking, which is really a nightmare. We had an incredible show with Rachel Yarborough, who talked about the grief she went through when she lost her twin sister, and how she has turned that around for good now and works with a program called All for My Sister. And that was inspiring. We learned how to reprogram our grief using neurolinguistic programming through Art Geiser. That's a show you might really enjoy listening to. We looked at the grief of broken trust and broken dreams through attorney Rachel King, who works with families going through all kinds of domestic loss, domestic problems. But she brings this beautiful heart of hers to the legal work she does. We looked at the grief of human trafficking with Marjorie Saylor, who lived that nightmare and now devotes her life to helping other women and other men come out of that darkness and that nightmare of being a part of human trafficking and sex trafficking. Amy Scruggs, one of my dearest friends, delighted us with her just heartfelt comments and heartfelt story of navigating grief as a single mother, all the loss that goes with that, the loss of the safety, the security of the marriage, the loss of the income, all the struggle that goes with knowing that your children's lives depend on you. That was a wonderful show. We looked at one veteran's journey to heal the wounds of war with my dad, Jack Gutman. He talked about the trauma he went through, the PTSD that was lifelong for 67 years as a result of having been an 18-year-old kid on the beach of Normandy, having to do work as a medic, patching guys up, holding them as they died. He went through incredible trauma and then also had to serve in the theater in Japan. So he served in 2 theaters, all under the age of 20. So the trauma he experienced created a grief that looked like it was going to be lifelong until he was helped by an amazing man named Dylan. Oh, darn, I'm forgetting Dylan's last name, but he was the therapist that Dad worked with at the VA. And if it comes to me, I'm going to pop it back in because he's written an amazing book called The Warrior's Dilemma, where he explained on another show that we did last season, explained what happens to, if you look at the analogy, we're all kind of walking around like sheep here. Then we cull some people out of that group and we turn them into wolves so that they can protect us. And then when their service time is over, they're released back into the herd of sheep and they don't know who they are. They don't know how to fit. And that's one of the leading reasons for so much suicide among veterans who have served our country. So look for The Warrior's Dilemma. I know Dylan is his first name, and I'm going to be so mad at myself for the rest of the day that I can't bring up his last name right now, but Google will know. God bless Google. We looked at Susie Ryan's amazing book, Saving Summer, and what she taught us about helping children survive grief. That was a wonderful interview, and it was not that long ago. And then we had an amazing show with a young gal, 16 years old, Dylan Stolba, who had dealt with depression and anxiety as a teenager, and what that was like, what it was like living with it, what it was like trying to go to school and function when she had this depression and anxiety. And guys, a lot of our teens are going through this right now, particularly since COVID. You know, so many kids that I was seeing at that time were depressed and just had no energy because they were so tired of just sitting in their rooms all day going to school. But then when the opportunity came to go back to campus, they were anxious. It was kind of like they'd lost that skill for how do you get up and go out there and sort of compete every day? How do you feel good about going on campus and maybe fitting, maybe not fitting in? You know, maybe finding a peer group and good friends and maybe not. There's so much anxiety that's come up for them. And Dylan educated us about a lot of that. And then we had an amazing show with JC Cooley, who also does a show here on E360 TV called It's Your Life. But JC educated us about the grief of Black men, what it's been like in this country for Black men. And that was an incredible eye opener. And he also has a book talking about all that. And I believe it's called The Grief of This Black Man. So JC Cooley, who's got a great show and a wonderful book, helped us understand what it's like dealing with the loss and the grief that so often comes into the life of a Black man. And then, of course, you know, the last couple of episodes that you have heard were me talking about saying the right thing when you don't know what to say, looking at the reasons why we have such a hard time knowing how to help each other when we're in pain. Why too often we avoid the conversation. We abandon our grieving friends, not wanting to cause any more pain. Actually, we abandon them because we're afraid we will cause more pain if we say the wrong thing. But trust me, if you just show up and you say, I don't know what to say, but I'd love to give you a hug. And if there's anything you need, I'm here. You don't have to do much better than that. Because what happens when people are grieving is they feel alone. And if you show up with a loving, compassionate heart, you ease that aloneness, you ease that pain. So you don't have to be this incredibly wise being. You don't have to have the answers of the universe. Just show up with your loving, compassionate heart and listen. That was the message of both of those weeks of talking about saying the right thing when you don't know what to say. And so I'd like to conclude today with just thanking E360 TV. We have had a wonderful experience being on your online TV platform. I want to thank JC Cooley, who brought me to E360 TV. And that was kind of full circle because I gave him his first shot at doing a radio show, and he has just taken that ball and run with it. I want to thank with all my heart the beautiful people who've shared their stories on this season of grief. And I look forward to seeing you all after a little bit of summer vacation. And I'm not sure yet where we're going to go in the fall, but we're going there. We will. I thank you all for being my listeners and my viewers, and I look forward to seeing you soon. And in the meantime, you know, whether life is cool or life is sucking a little bit right now, It never hurts to change it up. Just do something different. Change it up. And I think you'll find good things will follow. Take care, and thank you for being here. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining me on Change It Up Radio. I hope you found this episode informative and entertaining. If you want to hear past shows or you want to get information on being a guest or a sponsor of this show, go to changeitupradio.com. We all know that change is inevitable and it's necessary, but darn it, it's also tricky. My goal is to help you make the experience of change smoother and more productive. If you've benefited from this show, please subscribe to it, share it, and review it. That helps me to tune into what you really want to hear and what you really want to learn more about. Remember, you can find us on every major podcast platform and also on YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. We look forward to seeing you next week for Change It Up Radio.